Hello, Los Angeles. Let's get into it. What a week. As you all no doubt know, Queen Elizabeth II quiet quitted at the age of 96 on Thursday. After reigning for 7 decades, Dark Brandon strikes again. Sadly, she succumbed to injuries sustained in 1990 from being headbutted by Mr. Bean. The UK is now a land in mourning, the streets ringing out with mournful cries of, "What's all this then? What's all this then?" The royal family officially announced the Queen's death at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, tweeting, "The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Thank God they said she died peacefully as opposed to screaming as her parachute failed to open, like we all assumed." Out of respect, we will now observe a brief moment of silence as we play the British national anthem. Now, hey, come on. That's not right. Of course, we all know what happens when a queen dies. She stops releasing a pheromone that prevents female workers from laying eggs. The workers construct new chambers for between 10 and 20 larvae, and one of them becomes the new queen. The Queen's death is also an important event for me, as it marked the day I learned the Queen had a corgi named Pundit in the 1980s. Yes, I know, really frustrating. Like her pundit, mine will also be buried with me in a diamond-encrusted sarcophagus. I thought it was an original dog name. Really did. Thought I nailed it. Then these nepotism cases thought of it in the 80s. Meanwhile, here in this still pretty democratic nation that fought a pretty cool war to not care too much about the comings and goings of monarchs, it's our first show back for the fall, and midterm season is in full swing. The fundraising emails are at near peak ripeness, just a few more days to hit that perfect, desperate flavor. It looks like we're locked in a battle of the titans. What does that mean? The latest polling suggests Republicans are still favored to take the House, but hey, who are you going to trust? Unreliable polls or that terrible feeling in the pit of your stomach? The Senate is looking like a coin flip. Here's what that means. Find a coin. Instead of flipping it, mail it to Raphael Warnock. Then do that 10,000 more times. Voter registration continues to climb, especially among young people and women, likely spurred by the overturning of Roe v. Wade, a trend that is continuing across red states. In Kansas, 3-1 of these new voters are Democrats. Sometimes all it takes to get people to the polls is for shit to hit the fan. Sure, you're covered in shit and you need a new fan, but at least you're out of the house. The Obamas returned to the White House on Wednesday for the unveiling of their official portraits, marking their first joint visit to the building since their departure in 2017. All right, we have 2 different jokes. And there's no way to do both without introducing them like this. Okay, so they unveiled their portraits. Say what you will about Hunter Biden, but the man can paint. All right, option number 2. The portraits are beautiful, but I disagree with the use of macaroni no matter how much work Joe put into it. It's sweet. All of them in a little row. U.S. federal judge Eileen Cannon, a Trump appointee, granted Trump a special master to determine if documents found in Mar-a-Lago are either personal property covered by attorney-client privilege or covered by executive privilege. None of this makes a lot of sense because A, there's already a process for filtering out documents covered by attorney-client privilege. B, you don't need a special master to get your personal documents returned because the DOJ has no interest in keeping a medical record that says, "Hey, Don, your blood sludge." C, Biden has waived executive privilege, and oh, by the way, executive privilege is about protecting the ability of the president to get candid advice, and I'm not sure that applies to a top secret pic of Macron's wang. That's not about deliberating to make policy choices. He didn't do that. Also, the whole thing is stupid because this low-rent Trump judge doesn't even deal with the thornier problem, which is Biden waived privilege. Trump wants to claim privilege. What happens if a current president and a former president disagree on this matter? It's not something that can be resolved by a rando lawyer who sits near a judge for a while. And on top of that, between Trump's squad of legal zeros waiting 2 weeks to request the master and this judge waiting more than a week to decide on the request, DOJ has already spent almost a month rifling through the documents seized by Hoover's movers back in August. Hoover's movers. J. Edgar Hoover. See, it's kind of fun. Just a little aside. It's not a joke, but it's a fun little turn of phrase. You can take that with you. That's something you can use in your life. Throw it in. People are like, oh, little wordplay. The DOJ had to proceed, of course, even though they did have almost a month, the DOJ had to proceed slowly because every document had to be run under a black light, and a forensics expert had to determine if the little bright spots were cum or ketchup. Yeah, ew. 100%. You hit the nail on the head. Ew. On Thursday, the Justice Department announced it will appeal the decision, but it will be heard by the conservative 11th Circuit, which Trump pushed further to the right, and ultimately by the Supreme Court with its 3 Trump-appointed justices. I wouldn't count the DOJ out just yet. Where there's a will, there's a way, and oh, I'm sorry, it says here both the will and way were appointed by Trump. Trump and his cronies have until Friday to submit a list of possible special masters because for some inscrutable reason, Trump gets to suggest the candidates who get to assess whether or not the DOJ can have the evidence of his crimes. How is this the process? It's like an Air Bud situation. There's nothing in the rule book that says a putrefying former New York mayor can't be the special master. Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor and very large Senate candidate John Fetterman announced this week that he'll commit to one debate against his Republican opponent, Dr. Oz. Fetterman said his campaign is still exploring accommodations for his auditory processing problems in chaotic auditory environments, a common condition for people who have had strokes. Meanwhile, Dr. Oz's campaign is exploring accommodations for the fact that Pennsylvania voters are successfully processing all the things he says and does. In worse news, the Supreme Court is set to hear Moore v. Harper after the Honest Election Project filed an amicus brief on behalf of the North Carolina legislature promoting a dangerous, bizarro interpretation of the Elections Clause of the Constitution, which would give almost limitless power to state legislatures. Moore v. Harper, I'd like a little less v. Harper. As we know, state legislatures in 30 states are controlled by Republicans, and the argument is a blatant attempt to give them the ability to reject elections in which Democrats commit the sin of winning. On the upside, all 50 state Supreme Court justice chiefs collectively issued a statement this week decrying the argument and asking the Supreme Court to reject the theory. Unfortunately, that's like all the nerds at your school collectively issuing a statement asking the bully to stop pantsing them in the gym and laughing at their penis. They don't have the leverage. Meanwhile, a federal judge in Texas ruled that employers can't be required to provide coverage for HIV prevention drugs because it violates their religious freedom. According to the ruling, companies should be able to purchase health insurance that excludes or limits coverage of PrEP, contraception, the HPV vaccine, and counseling for STDs and drug use, just as Jesus would have wanted. Didn't he literally do that? Wasn't that like a thing Jesus famously did? And I stop before we get to the New Testament in my tradition. But I'm pretty sure there's like a bit of like ministering to people in bad situations, something like counseling, something akin to counseling. And healing. Thank you. Well, obviously, our insurance coverage doesn't cover magical healing. In lighter news, Steve Bannon pled not guilty today to money laundering, felony conspiracy, and felony scheme to defraud, charges stemming from his organization We Build the Wall, which is accused of tricking supporters into donating $25 million to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. Part of me thrills at the thought of Trump supporters getting fleeced, but deep down, don't we know it's their trans son and librarian husband that have to fly in and figure out how to pay the mortgage, you know? We always pay. On his way into court for his arraignment, Steve Bannon declared the following to reporters.
For every conservative American, this is what happens in the last days of a dying regime. They will never shut me up. They'll have to kill me first. I have not yet begun to fight.
They will never shut me up. They'll have to kill me first, also known as the podcaster's oath. Las Vegas police have arrested a county official in connection with the stabbing death of Las Vegas Review-Journal reporter Jeff Gurman, who the official had accused of conducting a smear campaign against him. Did he think he was going to get away with murdering a journalist? Who does he think he is? The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia? Yeah, we got him. Meanwhile, Harry Styles and Nick Kroll smooched during a standing ovation for Don't Worry, Darling. Who knew millions of young girls would one day desperately wish they could be Nick Kroll? Who knew millions of young girls and first-wave gay millennials would one day wish they could be Nick Kroll? Who knew I would wish I could be Nick Kroll? Florence Pugh, skipped the film's premiere press conference altogether, allegedly because she was busy filming Dune Part 2, but arrived in Venice before the event ended wearing a purple pajama set and sipping an Aperol Spritz, more like Don't Hurry, Darling. Researchers have found that a large glacier in Antarctica known as the Doomsday Glacier, because it could raise sea level several feet, is disintegrating faster than previously thought. Calm down, glacier. We're all disintegrating faster than we thought. So true. And finally, NASA scrubbed a second attempt to launch the Artemis moon rocket on Saturday and won't try again for at least a few weeks. Sadly, it's a swing and an Artemis. Yeah, that's the down note we're ending this segment on. Thank you.